Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well and having a fantastic week. In today's video we're doing another cage reactions. I think this is part 8. So I'm going to have a look at some of your cages and talk about what's great in them, maybe some suggestions as well, because all of this is not to kind of be mean or anything. It's purely so that we can get inspiration for our own cages and also to give some constructive feedback as well. If you'd like to take part in the next one, I have no idea when it's going to be because I'm not very frequent with this series. All the details are going to be down in the description, so if you want to send in before I film the next one, you can do it by there. But let's get straight into it. So the first submission is from Lena, and she has 2 eclectus parrots called Yoshi and Josie, I believe, and they have this huge aviary which looks amazing. There's loads of natural branches in there. It's very big as well, so it's a great size for eclectus. You've got metal bowls in there, which we love to see. There's loads of shreddable toys. There's just so much going on in here, and you know, aviaries are fantastic if you have the space to accommodate one, because it just gives your birds even more space for enrichment, which is why we always promote having the biggest cage size that you can possibly have in your place. There are some, you know, cotton rope boings in here, and I talk about cotton rope all the time. It's just something to be very careful of, because if your birds chew it, then there is a risk of crop impaction, and also if there are any little loose fibres, sometimes birds can get their nails caught. But it's all about the individual, so if you prefer to keep using it, that's fine. We prefer to use sisal or sisal rope, a more natural one, but that's just something I wanted to point out. I kind of go over some of the similar points in most of these videos just to give you as much information as possible. But to be honest, this cage setup is incredible, and I'm sure you've got 2 very happy birds. If I was to give you any kind of suggestion for improvement, maybe if you can, see if you can have a substrate base. You know, we talk about that all the time on this channel. So having a substrate base at the base of the aviary really opens up that space as well, so they can use all of the space rather than kind of the top half, because a lot of birds love to go around rooting on the floor, foraging. You can put foraging toys down there. Chip's very passionate about that. So that's just another way of open up the space even more. But I think this is really cool, and thank you so much for sending in your photo. And of course it wouldn't be a BirdNerdSophie video without all the birds kicking off. So now the colonies are out because Pickles is screaming. Of course I waited till she was quiet before I brought her out, but they just know every time we get the tripod out, it's time to be noisy. So let's get into the next photo. This is for A Budgie, and this is a reasonable size cage, and you've got the stainless steel bowls, which we love to see because they're a lot easier to keep clean compared to plastic ones. There are some lovely natural perches in here, and like a natural kind of log bridge. I really like those. I think they're fun. You've got some bits and pieces above the cage as well. Now some birds can be a bit nervous about that, having stuff above them on the cage, but if your birds are happy with having stuff up there, that's fine. It's just something to consider, but it's really cool to be able to use that space above the cage. You've also got the kind of cotton rope, I can't remember what they're called, like 2 circles. That can be really fun for birds to perch on, but again, just be mindful about the cotton rope. They do in different places, like a natural rope one as well, so you could maybe consider swapping it out for a natural one. But I can't see the base. If you haven't got a substrate base already, I'm sure your budgie will really enjoy that because they are natural ground feeders. The only thing that I would suggest as well is taking out any bells. Now again, this is something I talk about a lot, and some people don't like the fact that I talk about it, but bells do have their risks. Your birds can cut their tongues on them, they can accidentally swallow the clapper from inside. Obviously both of those things are very serious, and a lot of bells, especially the coloured ones, are made from toxic materials, so I don't think that they're great to include. I talked about this recently in my toy safety video. But if your bird really does love bells and they don't get overstimulated, you can get bird safe bells that are like a long tube. But I recommend going and watching my toy safety video so you can learn a bit more about it. But thank you so much for sending in your photo. So the next submission is for a green cheek conure, and I really like this big style size cage. It's not the same as the ones that we have, but it is very big. The only drawback for this type of cage, which I see a lot, is the doors are very small. So if you want to furnish the cage, you really have to like climb in. So that's one definite flaw of these cages, which is a shame because they're really great otherwise. They're so big. So in this cage there's lots of fun things to do. There are shreddable toys, there's loads of natural perches, which we love to see. There's loads of really amazing toys in here actually. Speaking of toys, you might be able to hear loads of jingling, and that's because Scampy's decided to play with his ball on the floor, so I hope you can still hear me. There's a boing in here, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's covered in vet wrap. That's another way that you can make cotton rope safer. You can cover it in vet wrap, The only downside to that is it is kind of hard to keep clean, and also after a while the vet wrap gets a little bit sticky, so you have to replace it fairly frequently. But it's another way of keeping your cotton rope perches and just trying to keep them a little bit safer. You've got a cuttlefish bone in there. That's a great source of calcium and really fun for birds to chew on. Loads of natural perches, and I really like that sort of takeaway kind of toy at the top there. That's really fun. I noticed you've got a paper base as well. I think the bars are above it, so I'd maybe suggest having a substrate base if you can. Now, for those of you who want a substrate base but maybe your cage doesn't really accommodate for it, maybe there's too much of a gap, you can put foraging trays on top of the grate at the bottom, so at least your birds can go down there and still use that space. So that's maybe something you can consider. It's another way of just, again, opening up as much space as possible, because sometimes birds only use like the top third, maybe even half of the cage, and then you've got all this space that's unused. So if we can really maximise that space and get them using it, they're going to be even more enriched. But yeah, that's probably about all I have to say on this cage. So I can see your budgies up there having a look at your conure on the top platform perch. We love platform perches too. But thank you so much for sending in your photo. Now, the next photos I'm going to show you are from one of my patrons over on Patreon, Chelsea. Hi Chelsea, thank you so much for sending in your photos. We are starting off with Elmo, the cockatiel, who is just chilling at the back there. And to start off, I love the size of this cage. I think it's quite similar to the cages that we have. We have Liberta Oregon flight cages, but I know other brands make very similar kind of sizes. I really like the cotton rope that goes over the top of the cage. I think that, again, it uses more of the space. And as long as, of course, your bird is comfortable with that, then that's awesome. You've got a seagrass mat in there. They're really fun for foraging and clambering around on. You've also got, below that seagrass mat, a sort of a wooden block perch with sticks coming out of it. That's one of our birds' absolute favourite perches. It's really hard to get hold of at the moment in the UK. Olive especially loves this perch. So as soon as we can get them, I'm going to replace them all because it's a really cool perch. You've got finger traps sticking in there. I like to do that too, just getting finger traps and just shoving them through the bars so your birds can go and just chew them and have fun with them. Lots of natural perches, stainless steel bowls again, and high up as well, because sometimes people put them low down. It's not ideal because birds generally feel a bit more comfortable higher up, so the fact that you've got them higher up is amazing. Planet Pleasures toys I can see in there, lots of fun. And you've also got a substrate base, so bonus points for that. We love to see it. If I was to offer any suggestions, I would say you could add even more floor toys to the substrate base. I know you've got like a cardboard box down there. Don't be afraid to add a few more toys too. And then just this box at the back of the cage where Elmo is. Some birds will get a little bit hormonal and a bit funny about that, but if he's fine with it, as Chip would say, that's totally fine as well. It's just some suggestions and pointers that you can look out for with your bird. And next up we have Chelsea's green cheek conure, who's a cinnamon turquoise, and again another lovely size cage with a substrate base as well. That's really awesome, and it's kind of a similar kind of setup. You've got like the seagrass mat, and you've got that beautiful perch with the sticks coming out of it. You've got the shell perch, it's like a platform perch. We love that here. It's very popular with all of our birds. You've got like a seagrass mat that kind of hangs from the ceiling as well. That's really cool for a lot of birds. Again, some birds will find it kind of hormone triggering, some birds will be totally fine. But the other thing to consider with these seagrass mats that hang from the ceiling is a lot of them come with plastic chains. And sometimes for birds like green cheek conures or lovebirds, caiques, that kind of thing, they do like to chew on plastic chains. And it's not going to be ideal because plastic will chip and obviously they can't digest it. It can be a bit sharp as well. But again, not all birds will do this. So it's all about knowing your own bird. For example, chip and fish can have plastic chain type toys, although I don't use them very frequently, but they do have one in there today. But I wouldn't put them in my conures cages because they would chew them, but they can have them outside of the cage. So again, it's all about knowing your own bird. You've got the stainless steel bowls nice and high up, platform perches. There's just a lot of amazing things in here, but again, it's very similar, just with a substrate base. Just add a few more floor toys, DIY toys, that kind of thing. But this is a really cool setup, and I'm sure you have very happy birdies. And the final two submissions are from ParrotCrystal. We're going to start off with the budgie cage. Again, I love to see these big cages. It makes me very happy because I know that it provides birds with so much space and opportunities for enrichment as well. Chip agrees, it's very noisy today. We've got loads of natural perches in here. We've got a ladder as well. We love ladders. Birds just love climbing all over them, chewing them up, all that kind of stuff. I think as well you also have paper on top of the bars, which is great. So again, if you can't take those bars out, you can still put things on top of them, because when birds crawl around on bars, it's not great for their feet, and if they don't go down there at all, then you're kind of missing out on using all that space. So that's why I'm very passionate about, you know, substrate bases or just having something down there for them to play with. And they have got a bowl of something down there. There are a few interesting toys in here as well, which is cool. You've got the cotton ropes I've already mentioned. So in terms of some suggestions, oh, you've also got like a Planet Pleasures kind of natural toy, I believe, at the back there, which is amazing. So in terms of suggestions, the bowls are all in a like one corner and they're one above the other. So sometimes if you have bowls like that, your birds will end up pooping them. So I prefer having the bowls up high, usually near the front or at the side and next to each other too, because not necessarily with budgies, but I still think it's a good idea. Sometimes birds like to dip their food in water to make it a bit easier to chew, that kind of thing. So I like to try and have food and water near each other, or at least on the same kind of perch line so they can run up and down. So that's just a suggestion, but you can have like a bowl at the base that's full of toys or something, or a little bit of extra, or a water bowl. But I do prefer having the bowls higher up. It's just in my experience it works better for birds. The towel at the back, and also there's a towel on the top. If you do cover your birds, again, I've talked about this at length. I talk about it in my hormones video. So if you'd like to know more about why I personally don't cover my birds, there's all the info in there. But sometimes having covers all around can promote hormonal behaviour. And of course as well, if it's not made of digestible materials, then there's a risk of crop impaction. But again, it depends if your birds are chewing it, but I prefer to, you know, be a bit more cautious about certain things like this. But the other suggestion really is to just fill it out a little bit more with some more shreddable toys, because I'm sure your budgies will enjoy that. You can also change things around regularly, add swings and things like that. Just keep it interesting, because what we really like to do here is changing up the toys every single day. Even if you've got, say for example, 10 toys for your bird, if you change out those toys and just do a different mixture in different places every day, that makes them really enriching. So I'd recommend changing the toys around, adding a few more, maybe doing some DIY ones as well. So let's have a look at the next cage too. So this is for your cockatiel, who's chilling on top there. Love that. I've already mentioned about the blanket, but again, having the blanket on top of the cage and down the back could cause some hormonal behaviour, but if your bird's out all day, then you know it wouldn't necessarily be an issue. Again, it's all about individuals, and I can only go on what I see in the photos. There's some natural perches in here. We've talked about cotton perches before. We have got some finger traps shoved through the bars. Love that. You can see the bowls at the top here, which is awesome, and they're stainless steel too, which is brilliant. I've talked about bells before, but again, I'd recommend removing the bells if you can. Normally you could just cut them off with wire cutters, and then you can still use the rest of the toy, so it doesn't have to go to waste. I've talked about the paper on the floor, because again, these cages are quite similar because they're from the same person. You can see more Planet Pleasures kind of natural shreddable toys in there. Now there is one dowel in here, and again, I've talked about dowels a lot. If your bird has one dowel in its cage and loads of other natural perches of thicknesses, that's absolutely fine. The issue comes when you have more than one dowel, because you want to have lots of textures and thicknesses and different widths and that kind of thing of perches to keep your bird's feet in good health. But you can still have one in there if you need to. In our cages, we actually had custom-made perches from the Natural Bird Product Company, and I think they're made with birchwood, one of the two. I'll leave a link down below. And they are a long perch with fixings at either end, which kind of replaces the dowel, but it is natural, it's got different thicknesses, that kind of thing. So it's kind of an alternative to still have a longer perch, because longer perches are actually good for some birds. Chip and Fish love them. Olive's got one at the front as well, but Pickles and Scampi prefer to hop around, so they don't have one. But again, it's all about catering to the individual, so I thought I would mention that. And then the other thing to mention in here, which I've kind of touched on before, is there's a couple of, I think, like hard plastic toys. And again, plastic has its place, which David I think has spoken about recently, but we prefer generally to have plastic toys out of the cage. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in my toy safety video too. It's something we talk about a lot. Plastic has its place, but we prefer plastic toys out of the cage, and then we have natural toys in there, because we can't always supervise our birds 24/7 when they're in the cage. So if they've got things that are safer to chew, then they are going to stay healthier and happier. If they're chewing on plastic, we want to avoid that. So that's just a suggestion, but thank you so much for sending your photo. So that brings me to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of these wonderful cage setups and getting inspiration for your own birds as well. As I said, I don't know when I'm doing the next one, but if you would like to take part in the next one, I will have all the info in the description if you'd like to take part. It's better to email me, because if you send them via Instagram, you know, any photos or anything, they're not getting lost. So it's better to email me. Again, all the info is going to be down below. But thank you so much for watching. Hope you're having an amazing day. As usual, if you have any video suggestions or things you'd like to see more of, do let me know, because I would love to speak to you. But from me and Pickles P, thank you so much for watching. Take care and see you later. Say bye. Say bye.